Most of the time when we say, follow me, and we read those scriptures, we, in our culture, we really do not understand what Jesus is inviting us to. We don't understand the implication. We don't understand what is involved. We don't understand the commitment. And it's because of that that we have a Christian culture today that lacks commitment. They really do not follow Jesus. We might follow Jesus on Sunday morning, but come Sunday afternoon and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we don't. And I'm here, and my mission and my goal is to give us a clear understanding of what it means to follow Jesus. When he said, follow me, 2 words are, and I shared this last week, there is no subject in the entire Bible other than your being forgiven and God loving you. There is no other subject in the entire Bible as important as those 2 words, follow me. Because your eternity is based purely on what you do with those 2 words. That's how important it is, and that's why we're approaching this subject today. Now, we're going to turn it a little bit, and our subject title is Don't Follow Me. Don't follow me. And I didn't say that, but Jesus said that. Don't follow me. And we're going to look at Luke chapter 9. Luke chapter 9, and we're going to look at a couple of verses, verse 23 through verse 26. And I'm reading from the Passion Bible. That is the NIV. I made a mistake. I'm hooked on the Passion Bible. It's a new translation that just came out, and I thought we had it on our computer. But forgive me, it's all I have this morning is the Passion, so the wording will be a little bit different. Jesus said to all of his followers, if you truly desire to be my disciple, you must disown your life completely, embrace my cross as your own, and surrender to my ways. For if you choose self-sacrifice, giving up your lives for my glory, you will embark on a discovery of more and more true life. But if you choose to keep your lives for yourself, you will lose what you try to keep. Even if you gained all the wealth and the power of this world, everything it could offer you, you lost your soul in the process, what good is that? So why then are you ashamed of being my disciple? Are you ashamed of the revelation truth that I give you? Now we're going to jump to the same chapter, but verse 57 and through verse 62. And on their way, someone came up to Jesus and said, I want to follow you wherever you go. And Jesus replied, yes, but remember this, even animals in the field have holes in the ground to sleep, and the birds have their nests, but the Son of Man has no place here to lay down his head. And Jesus turned to another and said, come be my disciple. And he replied, someday I will, Lord, but allow me first to fulfill my duty as a good son and wait until my father passes away. And Jesus told him, don't wait for your father's burial. Let those who are already dead wait for death. But as for you, go and proclaim everywhere that the kingdom has arrived. Still another said to him, Lord, I want to follow you too. But first let me go home and say goodbye to my entire family. And Jesus responded, why do you keep looking backward to your past and have second thoughts about following me? When you turn back, you are useless to God's kingdom realm. Now, without recapping on everything we said last week, we're gonna jump forward. Jesus would never make it as a church consultant today in regards to church growth. Nobody would hire him. Absolutely nobody. He had the worst history of recruiting people of anybody the absolute worst. He had no problem attracting crowds. When he did miracles, thousands came out to see him. When he fed people, the Bible said on one occasion there was 3,000 men. So if you do simple multiplication, maybe one man and a wife and a child or two, that 3 quickly adds up to 15,000, 20,000 people. And then on another occasion, the numbers jump to 5,000 men. So attracting the crowd was never an issue. Do some miracles, feed some folks, and people just come out from everywhere. But the moment he started to talk about discipleship, the crowds left him as quickly as they came. They dispersed immediately. Remember last week we used the scripture. Jesus said that wide is the road to destruction. It's wide and it's broad, and there are a lot of people. It's very crowded because there are a lot of people walking that road. But then he went on to say, he said, but there's another road that leads to life. And that road is narrow, and there are only a few people on it. There are only a few. Don't kid yourself. Most people don't choose the narrow road. Even though they come to church, it doesn't mean that they have chosen to walk the narrow road. Most people in church today are part of the wide and the broad road, because the wide and the broad road doesn't cost anything. But when you walk the narrow road, it is extremely costly, and the commitment is great. When Jesus says, follow me, he wants you to know what you're signing up for. He wants you to know what you're committing to. And we shared last week that Jesus, when he said to follow me to fishermen, he was speaking as a rabbi. And we looked at the history of that and what all of that entailed to follow a rabbi. It was an honor to follow a rabbi. You were considered the elite of the elite in the educational system, to be asked by a rabbi to follow him, to be his student. And Jesus wasn't going to the elite of the elite. He wasn't going to the straight A students. He was going to those who dropped out and went back to the family business because they couldn't make the cut. And when he said to Peter, and he said to John, and he said to James, I want you to follow me, because they all knew that he was the up-and-coming rabbi of his generation. And when he chose them, it was an honor beyond honors. Jesus, you would choose me to follow you? And they immediately dropped their nets and left everything and followed him. What we miss here is that to follow a rabbi meant that you left your home, your family, your income, your occupation. You left everything to follow the rabbi and to be his student. So when Jesus says, today, follow me, different generation, different time, different value system, but the words transcend time and culture and economics. It transcends all of that. The words are true today as they were when he said it, walking the seashore of Galilee. Follow me requires the same commitment. And that's what we miss today in our culture. You see, in this text, Jesus is talking to 3 individuals that represent 3 levels of commitment. I don't know if you've noticed that. But the first guy comes and he says, I want to follow you, Jesus. This is a good thing. I want to follow you. And Jesus, in his approach to him, he addresses the man's values, his value system. And he says to the man, he says, well, let me just tell you something. He says, I want you to know that animals all have homes, but I don't have a home. And if you're going to follow me, it simply means that you are going to be homeless. That's the cost you will pay to follow me. What he was doing was he was challenging the man's set of values. His set of values. What do you deem valuable? What is most valuable to you? And are you willing to live a life without it? I'm reminded of a guy back in my early days when we were crazy for Jesus. And I remember one of my buddies, we're all hippies, and he decided he was going to go into mainstream. And he shows up, he's got his hair cut, and his beard's gone, and we're like, dude, what happened to you? Are you going to be like the old people? You've sold out on us. And he said, no. He said, I feel in my heart that God wants me to become a mortician. And we thought, are you crazy? Of all the occupations, I'm sorry, I don't know if there are any morticians here, but I do not want to handle dead people. And he said, no. He said, no. God spoke to me and said there is no better time to reach people and to tell them about Jesus than when they just lost somebody they love and have come face to face with the fact that you don't live forever. And he entered into mortician school and became a mortician. So what I'm saying in that is what are your values? What do you value? Are you willing to embrace an occupation that Jesus asks you to embrace? And maybe it's not an occupation of your choosing. Are you willing to do that? Deborah and I, we were talking yesterday afternoon and reminiscing a little bit. And I don't know, everybody knows that last Sunday was my birthday. Thank you. You guys were all so kind and wishing me a happy birthday. And but we were talking about all the years that we have been in ministry. And I don't know how the subject came up, but I said, ministry was not what I chose. I started out to follow in my father's footsteps and be an artist. That's what I wanted to be an artist. I actually was up north preaching in youth groups and youth camps and racing back to get back in school and not miss the semester in art school. And God spoke to me while I was in Oregon and said, you are not going back to school. You are destined to go in the ministry. That is what I picked for you. And if it wasn't art, my second passion was to become a trial lawyer. I wanted to be a criminal trial lawyer. I wanted to go to law school. In fact, there was a time in my life when I decided maybe I would pursue that as a second occupation. And after a short time in school, God began to speak to me again and say, you are not an attorney. I've called you to be a pastor and a teacher of my word. That's your calling. And I argued with God. Remember, I wanted to be an attorney, right? We argued. And he produced no evidence. And I produced all the evidence why I shouldn't do this. I'm no good at it. I'm not eloquent. I mix words up in my head all the time. I'm screwy that way. I stutter sometimes. And I'm just not really good at it. But he didn't argue back. He said, that's what I want you to do. Now, if you're going to follow me, then that's what you will do. So I stand here today, not because it was my first choice. I stand here today as a disciple of Jesus Christ, doing what he has asked me to do for 40-something years now, and I'm consistent in it, and I will do it till the day they bury me. I'll probably do my own funeral. I'll videotape my own funeral. Because when I go out, I want to go out talking about Jesus. So what are your values? We live in a culture today that sets values on so much stuff. But do our values align with what is valuable to Him? Let me give you an illustration. What if you had planned a grand vacation and you had saved for it for a couple of years, and you were going to buy the tickets, and you're going to go to Hawaii and or some exotic place, and you're a hardworking man or woman, and you deserve the vacation and the break, and you came to City Church, and you're thinking about your vacation. You're not listening to me at all. You're thinking about being on the beach and working on your tan, and you got to lose a few pounds so you can fit in the bathing suit, all that stuff. But somehow you hear across the room that there is this young gal that's going to lose her apartment because she can't pay the rent. And God speaks to you and says, I want you to take the money that you are going to spend on the vacation, and I want you after church to walk over to her and write her a check and pay her rent for a couple of months. Now, I'm not saying he's doing that, but I'm not saying he can't either. Now, what do you do with that? Well, I ain't going to do that. I'm going on my vacation because I deserve a vacation and I worked hard for it. You see, or do you adjust your values to what is valuable to Him? Her having a place to live at that moment is more valuable to Jesus than your laying on the beach in Hawaii, and He's asking you to be His agent of help to her and to reach out and to bless her. But if your values do not align with what's valuable to Him, you will say no and continue to walk the broad road. I speak from experience. I have to take Dr. John to lunch at least every other week so I can spend an hour griping and complaining to him. And he listens ever so patiently. And if it doesn't work with him, I find somebody else in the in-between. Because I complain. I sat in an apartment office. I had just spent the day. It was a day from absolute hell. And the last person I'm sitting talking to, I'm thinking, oh my Jesus, not another wacko job. I can't take this anymore. And I had to race over to the church. So I get in my car, and I raced over to the church complaining to God. How many wacko people do I got to deal with, Lord? I'm just about ready to lose it now. And you know, God spoke to me on Union Avenue. He spoke to me. He said, son, he said, you are there for one and one reason only. I know people say, well, the crime went down and you took away all the crime and you did this and you turned a dysfunctional property into the safest property in Fairfield. That's not why. I thought that was why. But that's not why. God said to me, He said, I want you to look at people that I send through that door as somebody that I love and I'm trying to help. And I'm trying to get them off the street, and I'm trying to get them housed, and that's why you are there, because you know how to do it, and nobody else will care. Do you know the light went on inside of me, and I started to count the amount of people that we were able to give housing to that would not have made it if I didn't fight for them, argue for them, duke it out for them, to get them in. I counted 22 people. I don't like it. It's not my comfort zone. But Jesus didn't ask me to do what is comfortable. He asked me to do what He valued the most, and that was to help people find housing. So that's what I do until he tells me your assignment is done. I'm still going to complain to Dr. John every other week. But what do you value? Is it what he values? Could it be that God has you where you're at because that's your assignment? And you complain like I complain, and you want out like I want out, and all of that, you squirm and fight and all of that, and God's not listening, because as long as you follow him, that's your assignment. And when he's done, he will cancel the assignment. The second guy comes and he says, Jesus, I want to follow you, but I want to wait and let my dad pass, and I want to bury my dad. And what Jesus does is he challenges his priorities. He challenges his priorities, because whatever is important to us, we will make time for. Whatever is important and to us, we will spend money on, and we will make time for it. And Jesus is challenging this guy's priorities. You are here today. Well, maybe some of you are here because you had to come, because your wife dragged you or your husband. But most of us are here today because we valued it and it became a priority. There are a lot of people that are not, because it wasn't a priority to them. A round of golf was maybe a higher priority. Or going to a restaurant, or going to the park, whatever it is. See, we live our life according to what is a priority to us. It's like the wife that says to her husband, I really could use some help. Would you take the trash out? And he's laying on the couch. He goes, I ain't taking no trash. I'm way too busy. Can't you see the remote is occupying all of my attention? And he gets a call on his cell from his buddy that says, you want to come shoot some hoops? And he races to the bedroom and he puts on his Jordans and he jumps in the car. She goes, where are you going? My friend called me. I got to go. I got to shoot some hoops. What he just did was show what his priority was. To follow Jesus and to be a disciple means that we get in the book and we discover what his priorities are. They're spelled out really clear. In fact, Jesus even started ministry by opening Isaiah and reading. And he said, I was sent for this purpose. This is my priority. And today it's fulfilled. I'm here and this is what I'm doing. We learn what his priorities are, and we align our priorities with his priorities. And that's the way we live life. But there are so many people running here and running there and buying this and buying that according to their own set of priorities. But that's not true discipleship. Discipleship is realizing what is important to him and aligning my priorities accordingly. Let me give you an illustration. We had a great idea just the other day on a way to expand. And so we called all the people involved with our living center together, all the staff. And before we met, I started a list of pros and a list of cons. And the pro was, I could only think of one. More housing for people that Jesus loves. But the cons, I came up with a whole lot of cons. Costs money, liability, security, blah, blah, blah. I went right down the list. So when I presented my list to everybody, I noticed that everybody in the room didn't focus on the negative. They all focused on the positive, which was singular, only one. And I realized that we have one mind, and that is to clearly define what is a priority to Jesus Christ. And in knowing what is a priority to him, we align this church accordingly, and that's why we do what we do. We're not interested in doing and being what isn't his priority. There are a lot of church programs today that you do not see here because we are so careful to keep our mission on track with what is his number one priority and number two, not what is down the list number 50 and 100. Does that make sense? Your giving on a Sunday morning helps keep us focused and going after what is important to him. It's not necessarily good for the property. It's not necessarily good for this building. Those are all the cons. But when the pro, on the side of the pro, it doesn't have to be but one. Is it important to him? And if it is, then it's important to me, and it's important to all of us, because that's why we're here and that's why we're disciples. The third guy comes up to Jesus, and he says, hey, I want to spend time saying goodbye to my family. I just need some time. And Jesus does what only Jesus can do. He says, well, you know, if that's what you want, and you start following me, but you look back, you're not fit to follow me, so just stay home. What Jesus was doing was Jesus was challenging his commitment. I'm afraid to challenge people's commitment sometimes because I know the reality is there's not much of one there. I'm not trying to point a finger at anybody. But you know there's commitment when you embrace the hard thing and you steady the course during the hard thing and the hard times. You don't just go where it's easy. We see lack of commitment in churches over something like a bake sale. They didn't sell my cake, I'm out of here. Or I love this one. Could you help out in the kids zone this Sunday? Well, I don't do kids zone. I don't like kids. I'd get somebody else to help out in the kids zone. Well, I don't know. It seems to me that kids are important to Jesus, so that goes back to the priority issue and the value issue, and now we're looking at your commitment, the issue with being committed. The big question is can God trust you? Can he give you something and trust how you're going to use it? We're going to hit on this next week, but it reminds me of a parable where a man, Jesus said, a man had a great harvest. And he says to himself, I think I'm going to go build bigger barns so that I can sit back and take my ease and life is just good. But guess what? That night he dies. And what does God say to him? God said, you fool. While you thought you were going to lay up money and take your ease, this very night your life was required of you. You are a fool. Could it be that God has given you that raise not so that you could buy the bigger car? I'm not saying he didn't. If you want the bigger car and God gives you the green light, go buy it. But could it possibly be that some of the things that God has blessed you and blessed me with isn't for us at all? And we're to be a steward with it, to channel it to something that God has deemed more valuable than you're riding in the new automobile. And if so, where is the level of commitment? Can you be trusted with it? I remember as a young man, I told this a few times, but I worked in a warehouse, and all I did was drive forklifts. First real job, actually. And it was a Japanese company called Hitachi when they first came to the United States. And I was really good on a forklift. I mean, I could pick up a load of TVs without hardly slowing down. And I mean, I could spin that thing on 2 wheels. I was good. I just, when you drive a forklift 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, you get good at it. But because of my Christian values, the head guy of the warehouse thought I understood Japanese management. Where he got that, I do not know. I just worked like a believer. Do all things as unto Jesus. So I really worked hard. And he thought that I understood Japanese management. Well, the company closed. They went back to Japan. It was a bad economy. And he circulated my resume to Japanese companies. I didn't even know what a resume was. He said, write a resume. I was the last person to leave the plant and let go. He said, write a resume and give it to me. I'm going to tell my Japanese business people about you. I didn't know what a resume was. I had to go find somebody to write it for me, which was really one paragraph. I worked at Jack in the Box and I drive forklifts. So I can make hamburgers and I can drive forklifts. That was it. He circulated that resume, and I don't know what he told people, but they were calling me to interview to be the president and the vice president of major import-export operations. I kid you not. All I owned were jeans and T-shirts. And I went on a couple of those interviews, and I realized, you got the wrong guy. I don't do this. I drive a forklift. I'll work in the warehouse, but I can't run this whole operation. Well, lo and behold, a company, Citizen Watch Company, came to America, up Beverly Hills area, and they called me up and they said, son, they didn't say son, Mr. Mulvey, we've heard all about you, how you're an expert in Japanese management. I haven't even gone to college, and now I'm an expert in Japanese management. I was trying to be an artist. And they said, we want to offer you a job. I said, you haven't even met me. That's okay. We know all about you. We've done investigation. We want to offer you a job. And I said, no, I think I have a job. They said, no, you don't understand. Whatever you're making, we'll more than double it, easy. So I go to this really prestigious office with atriums and glass railings and levels. And I'm like, wow, waterfalls. And I meet these dudes, you know, and they hire me on the spot. And they say, let me show you your new warehouse. And I walk in. I've got a vault, a warehouse. They said, you are in charge of import-export around the world. You're bringing them in from all these countries. I was like dumbfounded. I had 2 secretaries, and I made a pile of money. I was making so much money, I didn't know what to do with it all. I'm sitting on the front row of church, and they're getting ready to take the deposit, and God spoke to me and said, that money I gave you is not for you. Don't touch it. It's mine. And you give it to me, and if you will, I will bless you immensely. The offering came, and I was carrying a fat wad of cash. I opened my wallet, and I just started putting it all in the offering. And I did that every Sunday. Just put the money in the offering. It was God's money, not mine. I can go on and on and on, but let me just tell you, my first house that I bought, a guy in the church found this super sweet deal, and he was going to buy it. Businessman in our church, who's going to go buy it? And God spoke to him and said, you're not to buy that house. That house is for Scott. You go tell Scott about the house. I'm giving it to Scott. We looked at that house, and I said, oh my gosh, I cannot believe it. We bought the house. It doesn't stop there. I'm still giving all God's money back to God. Now we own our first house. We move out of the apartment. We're living in the house. Remember God said, while I sat on the corner, I will bless you immensely. The house next door, the lady passes away. My wife says, you ought to go see if you can work a deal to get that house. I said, no, we can't afford that house. I ain't going to go do that. And I didn't do it for a couple of weeks, and they accepted another offer, which I didn't know. So I went over there one day. The realtor was there, an old man, and I said, I would like to see about buying this house. He said, son, he said, we've already accepted another offer. I'm sorry, you're too late. So I went back to my house next door and said, oh, well, I tried. A day later, the next day, he's knocking on my door. He said, son, he said, I don't know how to tell you this. He said, but I pulled some strings and we're going to reject the other offer, so I'm going to take your offer. I bought that house for almost nothing, threw a coat of paint on it, and sold it for like triple. God was blessing me immensely. It starts, though, with a commitment. If you're not committed, we like to talk about blessing a lot and how God's going to bless and going to give. But God doesn't bless where there is no commitment. Because where there is no commitment, there is no discipleship. Follow me. Jesus said crazy things in Luke 9. He said things like, if someone doesn't take up his cross and follow me, he cannot be my disciple. Do we understand what he is talking about? He's talking about the instrument of torture. I wear a cross. We all think it's an ornament. But in that day, it was the instrument of torture created by the Romans. It was one of the worst ways to die. And Jesus said, if you don't embrace your cross, you cannot follow me. What a thing. He's crazy. What a thing to say to people. No wonder you don't have a lot of people following you, Jesus. Be like me saying, unless you go get the electric chair and haul it around with you, you can't be my disciple. Most of us would say, I ain't doing that. That's insane. He goes on to say, he says, if someone comes after me and he doesn't hate his father and his mother and his children and his brothers and his sisters, he cannot be my disciple. Jesus, the conditions are too hard. You mean I've got to put you above my family? Yes, that's exactly what he meant. You mean I've got to embrace hardship, even if it means physically? Yes, that's exactly what he meant. But you see, wait a minute. You mean it's not that I admit I'm a sinner. It's not that I believe that God is God. I confess Him as my Savior, and I pray, repeat after me. It's not that. No, that's just a small part of it. Following me is not just believing you're a sinner. It's not just believe that He is God. It's not believing and confessing He's the Savior of the world and to pray after me and come forward and dedicate your life. Following me means you begin to follow me and you begin to do what I say. Matthew chapter 19, and we're going to pick up the pace. Matthew chapter 19. Most of you remember this story. This is the young, rich ruler, starting in verse 16. Then a teenager approached Jesus and bowed before him, saying, "Wonderful teacher, is there a good work I have to do to obtain eternal life?" And Jesus answered, "Why would you call me wonderful? God alone is wonderful. And why would you ask what good you need to do? Keep the commandments and you'll enter into the life of God." "Which ones?" he asked. And Jesus said, "Don't murder, don't commit adultery, don't steal, don't lie, honor your father, your mother, love those around you as you love yourself." "But I've always obeyed every one of them without fail," the young man replied. "What else do I lack?" And Jesus said to him, "If you really want to be perfect, go immediately and sell everything you own, give your money to the poor, and your treasure and your treasure will be transferred into heaven, then come back and follow me for the rest of your life. And when the young man heard these words, he walked away angry, for he was extremely wealthy. That blows my mind. He's rich, he's influential, he's young, and he comes to Jesus and said, basically, I want to follow you. And Jesus says, no. Before you follow me, I want you to go do these things, then come follow me. Are you crazy? That would be like somebody coming to me and saying after church, Pastor, I really want to be a part of City Church. I like what you're doing here. And I say, no. You can't be a part of City Church until you go sell everything you have and you become homeless, because we're all homeless here. I'm telling you, we wouldn't have anybody sitting here today. They'd be going, I ain't doing that. You're crazy. It costs too much to follow you, Jesus. You really didn't mean that, did you? Is that really what you meant? You see, I would have said to Jesus, let's do a soft sell here. Trust me on this. I'm good at sales. Don't tell the man no. Don't get that word out of your vocabulary. Tell the man, follow me, and we'll soft sell. If he's got too much stuff and you want him to get rid of some of it, tell him later. After all, Jesus, he could fund your ministry. You don't have big donors here. He could fund your ministry, and he could introduce you to all kinds of influential people. Isn't that what you want? How many of you know that pastors all over America would jump at that opportunity? That's why we don't preach the real Word of God, because we don't want to offend people, because we want people to stay so they continue to support the ministry. But Jesus wasn't interested for 1 minute what the man had. He looked through what he had and he said, I see something in you. You have a false sense of security. Your security is in what you have. So let's deal with that before you follow me. Because if you're going to follow me, I am your security, not what you have. So first, get rid of the obstacle, then follow me, and I will become your security. The man couldn't do it. The problem that we have in our day is we have made Jesus into someone that we're comfortable with. We have taken him from being the rabbi of his generation, calling students and disciples. And we've taken him into our culture, and we've made him somebody that we're comfortable with. We've made him somebody that asks nothing of us. We've made him into somebody that is westernized. We've made him into the middle class Jesus. We've even made him into somebody that looks like you or me, because we want to feel comfortable. That is not the Jesus that you are following. He's not interested in just making you comfortable. He said to Peter, before he left to go to heaven, he said to Peter, Peter, if you're going to follow me, I want you to know how you're going to die. What an odd thing to say. There he goes again, trying to discourage people, trying to talk them out of following him. Don't tell the man how he's going to die, Jesus. That's not the way you sell the product. You don't tell people what's wrong with the product. You tell them what's good with the product. We're good at that, aren't we? You follow Jesus, you'll be blessed, you'll be rich, you'll have a new car, you'll have a new house, the kids will like you, they won't run the streets. And that's the way we sell it, but that's not how Jesus sold it. He said, I want you to know, Peter, that if you follow me, you're going to die by crucifixion. Holy cow. I don't know. That would be a very hard one for me to swallow. If I follow you and live my life for you, I'm going to die. How? Run that by me again. I'm going to die by crucifixion? So I give my life following you. I give all that I have to follow you. And then it ends up where I get crucified. I wonder how many people would sign up for that. You don't find those posters in the military. Sign up and you get your legs shot off. You'll get some weird disease because of the country we're sending you to. I wonder how many people would have gone to Vietnam, sign up, and you were going to spray you with Agent Orange and you'll never be the same. No. The slogan is sign up and you'll see the world, right? Sign up and you'll get a college education, right? Because they're selling the product. Jesus didn't sell the product. He was the one that said, you probably are going to die. I wonder how many people would sign up for that. You see, a lot of people would say, Pastor, the cost is way too high. It is just too high. It's too high. I wonder in actuality if it costs more to not follow Jesus. When you weigh the costs, I wonder in reality what really costs more. Jesus said it. Jesus said, what if a man gains the whole world, but he loses his soul? There is an eternity. And how you spend that eternity is based on what you do with the two words, follow me. That's how you will be evaluated when you stand before him. It's not on what came out of your mouth, and we looked at that last week. It's not on the miracles. We prophesied in your name. We did all these things in your name. And then he says, depart from me, I didn't know you, because you didn't follow me. You did religious stuff, but you didn't follow me. Follow me is a whole different thing. It's not about the religiousness of it. In fact, following Jesus, a lot of what you do, people don't even see. But he sees it. He notices it. It's not done to be applauded by people. It's to be done to be applauded by the one I'm following. I'm not following you. I don't need your applause. I'm following him. I need his applause. So I wonder, in actuality, what really costs more. Because when you stand before God and I stand before God, you're not taking your 401k with you. You're not taking the car. You're not taking the house. I've done my share of funerals. I've looked in the caskets. They're not filled with money. Most funerals that have an open half casket, it's because they don't even dress the body from the waist down. You don't even go out with your pants on. Just saying. You go out with a shirt and a tie, and that is it. So none of it goes with you. The only thing you take with you is, did you follow him? That's it. It all comes down to that. That's it. You know, when we look at the story of the rich guy, remember the young rich guy? What Jesus was doing, and why I like the Passion Bible, he wasn't stripping him from everything he valued and liked. What he was doing was he was offering him the ability to transfer what he valued and liked into another banking system, one with eternal value. He was giving him the ability. In fact, he said that. He said, it will be better for you It will be better for you. He was trying to help the young dude. It would be better for you to make a transfer into the kingdom of heaven. It would be better for you in the long run. Because you'll reap the reward of it here and now, but there's coming a day where it won't be anymore. But that you keep reaping the reward through eternity. It would be better for you. Jesus was giving him the ability to trade up, but he couldn't see it. And we're going to look at that next week. Show me the money, honey. Because being a discipleship is always is based on value. I'm going for what's valuable. I don't know what your mindset is today, but again, like we did last week, I'm asking you to make a commitment. If you're not ready to make a commitment, then I'm going to ask you not to be fake and make a fake commitment. Because Jesus said, I would rather you be hot or cold. But if you're anything in between, I get sick over it and I spit you out of my mouth. Be hot or cold. If you want to be cold, be cold. Maybe you're not ready to be hot yet. Maybe I got to work on you another week or two. Stay cold. But if you're ready to make a commitment and be real about it and be true to it, you see, now you know what you're committing to, right? You're not committing to a church. You're not committing to I'll be a good husband. You're not committing, I'll give money to the church. You're not committing to that. You're committing to following the rabbi, to be his student, to be his disciple. That's a lifestyle all in itself. That's what you're committing to.